nature. So there's that guy. A little bit later on, I'm going to show you some Lasker, but let's get into this game. Boom, here we go. E4, C5. We have Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces, Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces. Game 3 of the World Chess Championship 2018. Knight to F3, knight to C6, bishop to B5. So for the second time in 3 games, we find ourselves in a Sicilian Rossolimo variation. You might remember from the first game that Carlsen as black got an absolutely crushing position and never had any even single piece in any substantial danger the entire game. It was ridiculous. He crushed Fabi, but then Fabi went into defensive mode, found a large number of incredible resources with very little time on his clock, and was able to hold the balance in a pawn down endgame. Vertwitch says he has 7,769 tokens. How did you find that out, Vertwitch? How did you find that out? G6, bishop takes, pawn takes, D3, so we're still following the original game. Bishop to G7, castles. And here now on move 6, Carlsen comes up with a variation which changes the structure of this game dramatically. He plays the move queen to C7. So I don't have to tell you that both of these guys went home after that first game and ripped them apart. They have a team of grandmasters called seconds, and their seconds are paid grandmasters or strong players, theoreticians, whose job it is to analyze certain types of openings and positions so that Magnus Carlsen doesn't have to, so that he can focus on the things that are important to him and his own preparation, and he doesn't have to bog his time down looking at opening variations. So you can bet that these two guys went home to their camps of GMs and tore this position completely apart. The move queen to C7, it's not a move that the computer particularly likes on first inspection, or at least it's not something that the computer recommends. But after you play it and you give the computer a little time to think about it, it actually feels like black is fine. And I think the reason why is because this concept of playing E5 and having the E5 and C5 pawns, it's a permanent structure. It's a permanent situation that's not going to change anytime soon. And so I feel like black has a large number of moves that he can play. That's going to give him a pretty good position and stuff, you know? So queen to C7, I believe in the last game, it was it E5 played immediately, guys? I think it was E5 played immediately in the last game. So Carlsen commits with queen to C7. The rook comes over to E1, and the E5 push is played. And then comes this move A3. So obviously Fabiano's team has come up with something that's going to give him a little more aggressive position. I hate this move. I hate this whole idea. I think it's fundamentally wrong. I play the Rossolimo, and I just think that this is not the correct way to attack these pawns. I don't believe in... Basically what white wants to do is playing B4, and then maybe he's going to be able to exchange pawns and use the A file, or just play bishop to B2 and contest this powerful bishop on G7. That's his idea. But I feel like it's a big weakness to open that up. I do. I feel like that's a big weakness. Because there's still going to end up being some kind of a knight getting into one of these squares. This pawn is going to get opened one day. There's even some lines where, like, let's say, I don't know, like maybe bishop comes to E3, and you're going to have to watch out for F5 pushes, because you can't capture because the pawn can push at some point in time. And there's going to be a double attack on the rook and the knight on F3, right? So I just don't believe in this plan. I got to tell you, the computer liked it, the commentators liked it, and Fabi played it, so clearly I'm the one that's in the wrong here. But as a Rossolimo player, this is not the kind of a plan that I would want to play. I would not be comfortable playing this. Certainly not against the likes of Magnus Carlsen. I think there will be a rise in the Rossolimo variation after these games, says Vertwitch. Very, very likely. Very, very likely. And for me, that's a great thing because I really, really like these positions a lot. This line and the Moscow variation got reputations for being very drawish. If you guys don't know the Moscow variation, it's basically the same kind of a concept. Or after E4, C5, knight to F3, instead of playing knight to C6 and bishop to B5, instead black can play D6. And now bishop to B5, which is a check. Now I got my pet line for this variation. But these lines were once considered to be like, White's attempt to try to take the tactics and the fun out of the Sicilian. It was considered to be very boring, a very boring opening. I've never found it to be boring. I have a large number of beautiful wins in this line. The reason why I stopped playing it and switched to a Mora was because with my plan of c3 and d4, I could never force them to take the pawn on d4, so I was never able to open the c file by force. And so that's why I switched to the Mora. I was willing to sacrifice a pawn if I had to open up that c file, which you still can't open by force, but I just feel that those lines offered more prospects for White. So here we go again, back to the move a3. And then we have knight to f6. A little bit of a surprise, but similar to what he did the last time. He intends to play the knight to d7 to guard these pawns. And then we have the move, b4. So White is going to play more actively this time. White doesn't want to get rolled off the board like the last time. He wants to be proactive. Now again, I don't like this particular plan, although Fabi was inherently aware of the danger on the a1 to h8 diagonal. He knew he had to occupy that diagonal and contest it, which is exactly what he did, but I still don't feel that it offered White much in the way of winning chances. Rosalimo variation, fun to play, hard to beat. Yeah, it's a great variation. I really enjoy the play for both sides. It's a lot of fun. There's different variations. You don't have to play this g6 and bishop g7 variation if you don't want to, but it's one of the variations and it's a lot of fun. So Harlem Knight is now hosting. What is up, Harlem Knight? Harlem Knight in the house. I checked the tracking number today. My merch mug is still in New York. It's in upstate New York. It's just waiting to go over the border. And then it's going to have to travel back across the country. So I'm just waiting on that mug. It's going to be a few more days yet, but it's on its way, folks. My Harlem Knight mug is on its way. It will be here soon. And then I will have a merch mug the same way as Harlem has one for me. There he is, enjoying the Trout mug on the Harlem Knight show. And here it is in front of the freaking Washington Monument. Can you believe that? There's an honor for you. Look at that, man. That is your high-quality Streamlabs merch mug. And you can click the merch button underneath my channel if you felt like it. Although I don't imagine I'm going to sell much merch of this mug today with my disheveled face and my wet dog hair. But at any rate, if you wanted to do that, you could do that. And Vertwitch is supposed to be getting one. I'm going to have to change that in the future, my parameters for my contests and stuff like that, because it's been like 3 weeks or something like that, and I still haven't been able to coordinate with Vertwitch to get him his mug that he won on the show. So I'll have to figure out how to fix that in the future. But at any rate, we'll have a couple of folks out there. We've also got Schwobi wearing my Schwobi shirt. He won that on my show. The Trout shirt on Mr. Schwobi right there. Boom. Okay, so let's get on with this game. So this move b4 for me again, it's a little this is not the kind of a plan that I would want to play. If White were to play like bishop to e3, I feel like again knight to d7 is coming, and now the problem is f5. So like let's say if b4, then f5 is really annoying. So what's happening is Black's going to get some like some initiative in exchange for a pawn, which is exactly what Magnus wants to do, and exactly what we talked about him doing in the games that we looked at before the championship started. We talked about how Magnus is more than happy to castle, to give up a pawn in exchange for initiative. He loves to do things like that, and watch what happens. After the move b4, Black immediately castles, giving up the c5 pawn. So again, I feel like if, for example, pawn takes and knight to d7 and bishop to e3, again, I feel like f5 is an extremely dangerous move. This is exactly what Magnus Carlsen wants. This pawn is going to have problems. There's stuff on the diagonal. I would not want to play this position as White. If we turn on Mr. Silicon for a quick second, It still seems to think white is okay here. I'm just curious to see whether that's the line that it plays. On pawn takes, whoops. On pawn takes, first inspection, it's liking bishop to e6, but I think knight to d7 is a better move. It does recommend bishop, and then it does recommend f5. So the computer still thinks that white's doing okay here, but again, I would not want to be in this kind of a situation. The only thing I can say that's bad for black is that he has this static pawn on e5, which is also a backwards pawn, and he's going to have to figure out exactly what he wants to do with this knight. Just temporarily, there's some cramping in black's position, but I would still be much happier to play this position for black and taking advantage of this nice long diagonal. So castling, Fabi does not take it. He plays knight b to d2, and I think here a lot of people assumed that black was going to take this pawn, because why not? Get rid of your double pawn. Another problem is that if you don't take that now, and white ends up taking that, and now you play knight to d7, maybe it's possible that white can play knight to b3, guarding this. It might be a little bit better that way than to play bishop to e3. So I think that's what they were going for. Hey, if you want to see me play some Rosalimo Veritwitch, I'm game, man. I love that opening. I'm not down on that opening at all. You know, like I say, the only reason I played that is because it didn't give me the same, open lines that I like with Amora. But I love those positions, and I love to take advantage of black's weakened pawns as doubled C pawns. I've had great success in these openings, so I'll definitely play that for you sometime. Tattered Green is in the house. What? Tattered Green is in the house, and he's got his 3-month sub badge. What is up, my friend? Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining me on the Trout Show. Calculated is in here. He's got the boom. Look at that. He's got the Snickers boom. Good to see you too, my friend. We're taking a little look here, guys, at the Game 3 from the World Championship today. If you guys have any comments or questions about this game, feel free to let me know. Just go ahead and tell me, what about this move, or that move doesn't work because of this. Don't be shy to interact if you guys see stuff in this game. I'm just talking about the game today and stuff like that, getting a little hype built up for the match as it goes on. So instead in this move, in this position, black played the move bishop to g4. I'm just kind of a little lost here, guys. This is more of a positional game than what I was kind of used to in these lines. I really don't understand all of the points of what they're doing here. I don't fully understand bishop to g4. After bishop to g4, if pawn takes, knight to d7, knight to b3, I mean, you might even just be able to sack it with b6. So it might also be possible to make some sort of a move and rook back to f8. I'm not really... Whoops. That might be possible too. I'm not really sure exactly what happens here. Opinion so far, the match is so tight, so similar in strength, that if Caruana scores one win, he might have big chances to never lose and win. Did this game end up in a draw? It did, Calculated Chess. It did end up in a draw. So all 3 games so far have been drawn. Veritwitch thinks if Fabi wins one game, he can win it all. I feel like... I wonder if psychologically that will be difficult for him. I'll give you an example. The first match between Kasparov and Viswanathan Anand. Anand actually won the first game after a series of draws. I think it was game 8 or something. He finally, 7 or 8, he finally won a game after a series of draws. And he had the lead, and the tournament was moving on. I think it was a 16-game match that time. And people were wondering, oh my goodness, is this it? Could Anand win this tournament? Win this championship match? And the very next game, I believe, he lost to Garry Kasparov, and it was in quite spectacular fashion. So he ended up losing that match and lost the world championship. He did come back eventually and become the world champion. But it can be psychologically difficult because the way that you play changes a little bit when you're up a game than when you're just tied and holding the balance. But so far, Carlsen has been in no danger. This is as close to danger as he's been in. And let me just take a quick look at what Mr. Silicon thinks in this position. Let's just see what happens after pawn takes. So it does say knight here. Let's say if knight to b3. So it's still recommending the move f5. It says black is completely fine here. The problem is that e-pawn can't take that, so black's the one with the initiative. Black can make all of the choices over here. He can even play the move f4 followed by like h5 someday and start moving stuff around. And then later at some point in time, if he feels like it, he'll then be able to, let's say after f4, he'll be able to move his bishop back to e6 and then take this knight. That seems like a pretty good plan to me. So bishop to g4, white plays the move h3. That's probably the most accurate move. So it forces either an exchange or a concession by black to give h3 for free. On bishop takes, which I think is what he did. Then we have knight takes, so he's continued his pressure on the e-pawn. The bishop is now freed up if it needs to. And the bishop also has this b2 move. Yeah, tattered and ended up in a draw. I thought white here had actually a pretty okay position, but I don't know. I mean, like, it's not winning or anything like that. It's pretty minor. That the advantage is very, very tiny. What happens? Calculated Chess asks if all 12 games end in a draw. Good question, Calculated. If the games end up in a draw, or if it's a situation where, let's say, just the match is tied 6-6, it doesn't matter whether there's wins or draws or not. After that, it will move to a mini match. I don't remember how many games, I'd have to look it up, but it would move to a mini match of 25-minute games with 10-second increments per move from the start of the game, which is called rapid chess. At the end of the rapid match, which could only be a couple of games, they would play a series of up to 5 mini matches of blitz chess, which would be 2-game matches where you would have to score 1.5 or 2 points out of 2 games in order to win. So let's say if you lost the first game, won the second game, that match would be considered tied, and you would play a second mini match. So even if you won the third game, but then lost the fourth game, so technically you won 2 games in a row, they're technically 2 different matches. So you would have to win a particular 2-game mini match. If at the end of those mini matches of blitz, the match was still tied, they would play the quote-unquote Armageddon system, which would be the final game. And in that game, players draw for colors. Whoever wins the coin flip or whatever would choose which color they want to be, white or black. Black would get, for example, 6 minutes on the clock, and white would get 5 minutes on the clock. But black would get draw odds. So in the event that black manages to draw the game, he would win the tiebreak. If he wins or draws, he would win the tiebreak. So the onus would be on white to win with the extra minute. I think I said the times wrong. So it would actually be 6 minutes for white and 5 minutes for black. So I think I said those times wrong. White would get the extra minute, but the onus to win would be on white. So that would be the results of what would happen if there was a tie. Last year, or the last World Championship match a couple years ago with Carlsen and Sergei Karyakin, did indeed end up going into the blitz games. And Karyakin was no match, and Carlsen won the World Championship on blitz time controls. So that's how that would work down. Oh, thanks, Calculated. I've been through a lot of World Championships. Some of you guys, this might be your very first World Championship ever. So that's why I kind of wanted to do this. It's just cool to have a community around that's into it and checking things out and stuff. So I've been through a lot of them, and we're going to take a look at another past World Championship, who is Edward Lasker. We've already taken a look at Wilhelm Steinitz, who was the very first official World Chess Champion. He won a match against Adolf Anderssen. They're both pictured in the picture to the left. Adolf Anderssen is on the left, Steinitz is on the right. And that was their match from 1966, often considered to be the first official world championship. And if not that one, then his match in 1886 against Johann Zukertort, pictured on the left side of the bottom right-hand picture. Steinitz is on the right hand of that right-hand picture. And that one for certain had a stipulation in it that this was for the World Chess Championship. And Steinitz won both of those matches, and therefore was the first official World Chess Champion. Blazero is in the house. He's looking for snacks. What's up? Hey, Harlem's in the house, man. Says definitely my first. Percy's in the house. What's up? K versus K2. Are you talking about Kasparov versus Karpov match? Percy, that was an excellent one. That was an excellent match. So we're taking a look at this World Championship game. So we were just taking a brief look there, and I guess I'll continue on while we got a few people in the house. Hey, Pickle Pond's in the house. What's up, man? Welcome, everybody. So we were talking a little bit about Steinitz, who was the first World Chess Champion. I believe it was 1894. And I'll just bring this mic a little bit closer so you guys can hear me, hopefully okay. I believe it was 1894 that Wilhelm Steinitz, at the age of 58, and quite desperate for the money, agreed to play a match against a young gentleman named Emanuel Lasker, who I believe was 26 at the time. Steinitz was 58, more than twice his age. Originally, the match was supposed to be for something like $5,000, but Lasker wasn't able to raise enough money. Eventually, Steinitz agreed to play the match for $2,000, probably because he was desperately broke and terrible with money. $2,000 in those days would be worth about $500,000 or more dollars by today's standards, maybe even like $700,000 by today's standards. And that young man that he lost to was none other than Emanuel Lasker, pictured here. Emanuel Lasker was a philosopher, a PhD, a mathematician. He toured Japan with his namesake, Edward Lasker, who was of no relation, who was an American, like IM level player. They both got quite interested in Go and became low Dan rated Go players. Went to Japan, got utterly destroyed, totally destroyed at Go, and that was the end of his Go career. But he did become quite a serious chess player. His brother was probably, Berthold was probably top 10 in the world at some point in time, but he was never a serious tournament player that I'm aware of. But at any rate, Emanuel Lasker won a series of strong matches, was able to secure the finances to play a match against Steinitz, and you can see in the bottom right-hand picture, you can see Emanuel Lasker on the left and Wilhelm Steinitz on the right. So Lasker won this match, and a lot of people criticized him and said, "Oh, you only won because you played an old man. You haven't played any of the other top 4 players in the world. You didn't really deserve that world championship." Emanuel Lasker's reply to that was to play a series of world championship matches, winning them all except for the one that he tied and retained the world championship on tiebreak against Karl Schlechter. But he won a series of world championships spanning 27 years to become the longest reigning world champion in the history of the world. And that is that gentleman right there, Emanuel Lasker, second World Chess Championship, linear. Continuing on till present day, we will take a look at more of these world champions as we go through the years until we reach modern times in the age of Magnus Carlsen. Tattered Green, take care, man. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you get some good advice. Yeah, Lasker was amazing. You're welcome, Tattered Green. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up on the chat. I don't see any of the chat in the chat box. I only see it on your stream. Well, I'm seeing your comments, so you must be in the correct chat room, Pickled. It's kind of strange. Hey, Chess Coach is in the house. What's up, Chess Coach? If you guys have Chess Coach emotes, throw them up. Throw them up for the Chess Coach. I mean, he probably is somewhere, like if you go back enough years in ancestry, Percy. But no, I don't believe that they are related at all. I've read a number of Emanuel Lasker's books. He's got some chess books, but he's got a cool book called Go and Gomoku, where he actually talks about his travels with Emanuel Lasker. And it's really a great read. It's a lot of fun. So I highly recommend those books if you guys can get your hands on them. They're classics. KB Khan's in the house. What's up? Yeah, Edward Lasker was a good player as well. He was an IM level player, won some good tournaments in America. I mean, the move went okay, Blazer. Thanks for asking. You know, I don't have a lot of furniture in here, and the landlord lied about some stuff. So I'm kind of not happy about that. The ceilings are as thin as paper, so everything that you say can be heard through those ceilings. So I'm really upset about that, because that interferes with my ability to do my streams and my late night lessons. But anyways, it's okay. I'm not going to complain. It's a nice place. I'm pretty happy. I'm here for a chess history lesson, and I'm happy so far. Cool. Yeah, just talking a little bit about the... yeah, just because like I said, a lot of people this is their first time playing, like watching a World Chess Championship. So I like to go over a little bit of like the history of it. You know what I mean? So you can understand what a big deal this is. This isn't just two great chess players today. This is for the history books, folks. We're going to be talking about Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana in 100 years. We're still going to be talking about them. And this is the Linear World Championship. There was a time in the 90s where it broke off into the PCA, which was kind of started by Garry Kasparov and Nigel Short, who had a split with FIDE. Yeah, I think Jan Timman might have been in some of those. Actually, I think Jan Timman actually ended up playing against Karpov for the FIDE World Championship. And then Kasparov broke away with Nigel Short. And then they started the PCA. And then there were the years where FIDE did this like knockout tournament, like the World Cup. And that was for the quote-unquote World Championship. So a bunch of people like Alexander Kaufman and Alexander Kazimzanov and Mickey Adams and Viswanathan Anand, and a bunch of people ended up winning that tournament and were quote-unquote world champions. But they weren't world champions. Sorry, guys. They were not the linear world champions. Kind of like when boxing has a bunch of different, you know, the WBC and the WBA and so on and so forth. Kamsky, did he challenge? It could have been Pickle Pine. I don't remember which one he was in, but Gata Kamsky did challenge for a world championship, and it could have been that it was the PCA. It could have very well been. All right, let's get on with this game here, guys. So we found ourselves on move 12. Let's do a quick recap of how we got here. A Sicilian Rosalimo, the same as the first game. The moves follow the same order until right here on move 6 when Black played Queen to C7, leading into, I think, a little bit more positional of a game. Rook to E1, E5, A3, a very strange plan that I still don't believe in, but Fabi he wanted to play actively, and he got what he wanted. Knight to F6, B4, castles, leaving the pawn hanging, not too worried about that just yet. Knight B to D2, bishop to G4, H3, probably the best move. Bishop takes, knight takes, pawn takes, and now this move A5. This was kind of where, you know, if there was ever going to be anything, this was the moment. And let's just turn on Mr. Silicon for a quick second and see what Mr. Silicon says. First inspection, Mr. Silicon thinks white's got an interesting position. And this move, rook to A5, was the move I was concerned about too, and here's why. Number one, you're taking away your target from the A1 square, okay? You're taking away your target from the A1 square. So now you're not going to have to worry later about some sort of like maneuver where black starts getting aggressive on the king side, and you have to watch out. You can't take that knight because of the attack on the rook with tempo. So I like the idea of just removing the target immediately. And number two, after let's say rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, maybe bishop to... I'm not really sure where this bishop goes, but the point is that this queen's going to be able to come over, whether it's to A1 or to B1 if black plays queen to E2. So let's just take a quick look at it on my line. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and let's say, I don't know, for example, let's say the bishop move here or something. So now this concept of queen to here, it's not that big of a deal, because among other things, I can play moves like queen to here, and if I want to contest that file, I can do that. If I want to contest that file, I can do that. This is no good because it's going to drop the A pawn, or the E pawn. And same thing if something like this takes place, if the queen comes to here, I could probably play something like queen to b1. And I feel like white is holding the balance and contesting this a file. So that's why I thought that move was interesting. Camel Clutcher told me that Grizzchuck and Svidler were talking about that line, but I don't know how seriously they took it or if it makes much difference. Oh my god, Pickle Pawn just subscribed. Dude, man. Thank you so much, Pickle Pawn. What is up? Pickle Pawn is in the house, guys. Yeah, there you go, man. There's some fish up. Boom. Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. What can we give you, man? Let's give this guy some love for that. That's very kind of you, man. High five. Cheers from the trout, man. Have some Timbits. All the subs on the trout show get some Timbits. Oh yeah, man. We gotta find a way to get you some of these pickle pawns. These things are delicious. Just look at those ones, all toasted with coconut and stuff. Come on, man. Cinnamon and which what? Delicious. And delicious. Cole Player's in the house too. What's up, Cole Player? I got to catch a little bit of Cole Player's stream. I think that might be the first time I ever saw it. Let me tell you a couple things about Cole Player. Number one, he looks a little bit like Robin Thicke. Okay, he's got a Robin Thicke vibe, or like maybe like a Seth MacFarlane kind of a look to him. Okay. Number two, he's got some really good quality equipment, really nice smooth mic and stuff. And number three, he's really personable with a chat. So like, if you guys aren't following Cole Player, that's a really cool show that's just kind of new to me, and I would highly recommend that you guys go check him out. Give him a follow right now. And he's also been really supportive of our streams and stuff like that. Like, he's been really cool about coming in here and subbing and giving bits and chatting with people and stuff like that. Just like an all around really cool guy. So I don't know why I didn't know about you before, if you just started streaming or I just like missed you somehow. But anyways, Cole Player's a cool guy. I highly recommend him. We got everybody in here. Chess Coach, Harlem. And if you guys want to comment, like especially Chess Coach, if you have any comments on these games, man, I'm going to try to really keep my eyes open for this. Because if you guys have any comments about these lines, I'm just telling you my personal lines, right? So I'll turn on the computer every once in a while just to see if it has an improvement or something like that. But I'm not giving you computer lines. I'm just telling you guys like my 2 cents, and you know. So like I could be wrong about a lot of these lines. I'm just telling you guys kind of what I'm seeing here. So these aren't stockfish lines I'm giving you. Oh, you're welcome, Cole Player. I do appreciate you, man. Did enjoy your show.
There is no obstacle that you cannot overcome, no problem that you cannot solve, and no goal that you cannot achieve.
Thank you, Harlem. Thanks for giving them that follow. I appreciate that.
To your situation.
Yeah, are you Chess Coach? That's interesting you say that, because so am I. I really, really like the Rosalimo. I like it from both sides. I also like the Moscow variation. I played those variations as white for years, and I've been known to play them on occasion as black as well. I don't mind playing either side of that. I really like the positions. I find they're deep and rich. I like both the positional thing where you're trying to mess up black's pawns on the king side, and then I've also got my pet line. And I've told you guys a little bit about this. Tell me if you've ever seen this line, Chess Coach. So here's my line against the. So in the Rosalimo, like the line, this is the line that I'm the most familiar with. Bishop takes, and pawn here. The reason why you have to play d3 now is because if you play c3, black might be able to temporarily take advantage of this hole on d3. Okay? But both in the Rosalimo, or even more so in the Moscow variation, I play the move bishop to b4, and after bishop to d7, I play the move queen to e2. And I will even play this in a Rosalimo. I'll even play this in a Rosalimo, guys. And I learned this from Lawrence Day, and then I also saw Jan Timman play it. The concept is that if the bishop takes and the queen takes, I'm attacking the b pawn. So the only logical move for black is to play queen here. On queen takes, if knight takes, I feel like knight to c3, and white already has some pretty good initiative, and you're kind of bullying black around, and you're still going to be able to take care of these pawns, like attack on those pawns later. So that's why in this line after queen takes, I recommend for black to play king takes d7. King takes d7, a much stronger move, and now black has a respectable position. So Jan Timman, in this position, after queen here, played actually knight to a3, believe it or not. And you can also try the move knight to c3. So like, let's say if black just continues with some normal schlum, you can play possibly knight to d5, where you're threatening knight c7, and attack the rook in the corner. And if the queen takes the pawn, then you can just check. So these lines are all very interesting. In my tournament practice, I've found that almost nobody ever takes this bishop. In fact, I don't know if anyone has ever played that against me in a tournament. It's more likely that they will play moves like knight to c6, a6, and g6. And I have lines against all of these moves, and I found these lines very rich and very interesting, and I don't mind playing this for both sides. Now, the Rossolimo, slightly different, in that here if you play this queen move, this knight could theoretically move to the d4 square. So that's something you got to keep an eye out on for. But I still feel like this move c3 is going to be powerful. And ultimately, I'm going to try to get c3 and d4 in, and if I'm lucky, open up the c file for use for my rook later on. So I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat. Sorry, guys. I haven't been on Lichess in a couple of weeks. I hope there are a bunch of studies going on. Yeah, I haven't really looked for that either, Chess Coach. I only got this link through Swingkita, who showed me that all the World Championship games are available on Lichess. Pickle Pawn says, I don't know, man. After seeing it twice, not too excited for another one. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see this twice, Pickle Pawn. I got to admit, I was not expecting to see 2 Rossolimos in the World Championship at all. I definitely thought Carlsen was going to vary today, and I don't think you're going to see him play this again. I could be wrong, but I think he's going to mix it up a little bit. Percy says, I wonder if the Irish journeyman chess master Ross Olimo knew his opening would end up in a World Championship match. Really, I know, right? Shenanigans, I tell ya. It's a good one, Percy. I love playing c3, says Cold Player. Yeah, I really like those lines in both of these variations. That's my style. Now, Fabi has chosen a different way. And now let's get back to the game again here. So Fabi has chosen a different way. He likes this different kind of a setup. The last time he played this knight to c3. This time he was a little more sensible. He left his pawn open for action on the queen side, and I think he got a lot more active position here. So now we come to this position, a5 again. I mean, the question is, should White be trying to potentially save a later tempo by exchanging off rooks? I don't really know. I don't really know what's the best line here. These positional lines are a little above my head, I feel. Chess Coach says, I think he will continue to play the Sicilian. I think the draws favor Magnus. I mean, that's a good point, and he hasn't been in any trouble, has he, Chess Coach? Have you noticed the point where he's been in any substantial trouble in any of these games, especially as black? He was crushing in that first game. Now, obviously, Fabi went home and he studied these lines, and that's why he chose the line that he did today to get a little bit more activity. But, I mean, this is probably as much of an advantage as White ever had in either of these two games. And is there really an advantage here? Black is completely comfortable. Black doesn't have a single piece on the board that's under attack. It's very, very easy and comfortable for Black to play. And if you can just avoid getting your pawns messed up on the queen side, if you can stop White from getting c3 and d4 and start hammering on your c-pawns, or in this case a3 and b4, if you can avoid that kind of a messed up position on the queen side, I feel this position is very, very solid for Black. A very high quality position. And I don't believe people who say this line is boring or this line is drawish. Oh no, it's not, man. And you can go to my chess games database and look up some of my games, and you will find some Moscows and Rossolimos. Believe me, it ain't a draw. It ain't a draw at all. They're beautiful positions. This game did turn out into a draw. Both of them have, but not without some rich play. So he ends up doing pawn takes, rook takes, bishop to d2, which is fine. And then came this rook move. Maybe it was possible that the bishop could have moved to b2, because now this move is off because of a bishop takes, of course. In this line, I actually don't really know what Black is going to do. Is he going to do rook to d7 again? Maybe he just swaps off rooks. I'm not really sure. But at any rate, it's fairly easy to guard that e pawn. Maybe he just plays like knight to d7, f6, and then moves his rook over or something. Chesscoach says, I don't think he has been in trouble. I haven't watched any post-game interviews. Yeah, I haven't noticed a point where he's been in any trouble, but again, these lines are a little over my head, so I could be missing stuff. I think he might have been a little uncomfortable today, but then some weird moves got made and the initiative went away. Yeah, like somewhere's around here. Is that what you're thinking, Chesscoach? Because this is the only part of the game where I felt like, you know, maybe I felt like White was better prepared for this line. I don't know what Carlsen, what novelties he had planned. I'm curious. I'm very curious in the other line, but like what improvements he might have made. But somewhere's around here, yeah, I don't know. Even already now, maybe I feel like Black is kind of okay, kind of getting okay here. So let's see how this game finished off. So he did play because, oops, sorry, that's why. It's because the move rook to d2 was played, so he's able to play rook a back to a8. Queen over to b1. A very sophisticated move and probably correct. He's just going to keep these pawns back here nice and safe. This is typical Fabi style. He's not going to make any unnecessary or unusual positional concessions. He's just going to try to place his pieces on more active squares, and maybe he can try to target these hanging, you know, chain or phalanx of pawns. So then that comes back to d7, queen up to b4, rook f to e8, bishop to c3, b5. A lot of these moves are kind of like, I'm kind of glossing over them. You know, knight to d7 makes a lot of sense. He's going to, again, try to unlock this bishop here. Maybe f5 is coming. It triple protects the e-pawn. But, like, this move, like, who comes up with a move like this? Queen to b4. Stick it in the computer, and I bet you it tells you that queen to b4 is right. Okay, it actually says bishop to e3. But I feel like I kind of like this move a lot. Whoops. I like this move a lot for White. He's connecting the rooks, okay? So he continues to contest the a file strongly. He's taking away the c5 square for the knight. And at some later point in time, if he wants to remaneuver that piece, he can do so. He might also be able to bring the rook up someday for a further attack on the e-pawn if he really wanted to. And the bishop is going to come to c3 and continue on, trying to take advantage of these couple of little sort of tender spots of Black's. World Championship, Game 3, folks. Fabiano Caruana is White versus Magnus Carlsen is Black. So the move rook f to e8 was played. So obviously guarding the e-pawn, but he might have already had this idea of playing the bishop to f8 and then maybe trying to plop a knight on c5. That was probably part of it as well. He might have also wanted to use this knight square for his knight to remaneuver to e6 and then to either f4 or d4. I'm not sure which one of those, or if it was just a sort of an old purpose kind of a move. And whoops, let's turn off that computer for a second. And then comes the move bishop to c3. I mean, I kind of feel like if White had anything, he had to be a little bit more proactive. But I can't really tell you like what move I think is best, because I really don't understand this position that well. I don't know why he's playing this. Does he now intend to play his queen back to b2? What are we supposed to understand, says Vertwitch? What are we supposed to understand from this game? I mean, my big takeaway from this was that the reason that I don't like the earlier plan of let me just find the move here, of playing A3 in the first place. The reason why I don't like that and I prefer a move like A4, vicing down on the B5 square, it gives more space to white for number one, but I don't like the idea of opening up this diagonal for the powerful bishop. I think it's wrong, fundamentally. Maybe, like, it's already safe to play F5 here, and then play the knight to F6. I don't know. What does Mr. Silicon think? Well, it's suggesting that black can play A5, for example, and vice down on the B4 square. But it still likes white's position. Whoops, what happened here? No, this is not right. That's game one. Let's go back to game three. Okay, so A3 again. So I don't like this plan in general, because I don't like the idea of opening up. The computer thinks it's fine. The commentators thought it was fine. Fabiano Caruana, World Chess Championship contender, thought it was fine. Obviously, his team of second grandmasters thought it was fine. So clearly, I'm the one who's in the wrong here. But I feel like in order to play this, you have to be extremely active to shut down that diagonal, which is exactly what Fabi did. And if you watch the game up until the point that we're at now, you can see that white recognizes the dangers, and he's keeping his pieces strongly and entrenched on that line, and even using the E5 square as a target. Maybe he was thinking here that if F5, he might do like queen back or something. Like now he, like the E5 pawn can never move forward. I'm not sure exactly what he was thinking here. So I don't know what's to be said about these positions. I'm just not that strong to be able to give you guys any like real grandmasterly analysis. This is a mysterious position to me. Vince Silden's in the building. What is up, Mr. Vince Silden? Pleasure to have you. Okay, let's continue on with this game, guys. So you got bishop to c3, Vince Silden. We're looking at the World Championship game from today. Bishop to c3, b5. He doesn't want to have that target, and he also doesn't want white to be able to stick a piece into b6 later. He might be intending to play his knight there someday. So rook takes, and rook over. So this is the move. If there was one last chance for white, this was it. I mean, the only move that I can see, guys, is like, can he try this D pawn push? Because if he does that, can't black just play c5? No, maybe not, because he's going to lose his e pawn. d4. Pawn takes, bishop takes, c5, queen c3, b4, queen c4. Is this a line? What does the computer think? The computer says rook to a1. That's sad. That's sad if this position is already a draw, because we're only 19 moves into the game, and Carlsen has easily neutralized any threats that white had. Brooklyn Raw's in the house. What's up, man? What is up? What is up? What is up? Going over the World Championship game. Basically, this was the move where I feel like this was white's last chance. If there was anything here, guys. I mean, what else? Queen to e7? Chess coach, you still around? Would you see anything in this position? Queen e7, he just plays bishop to f8, so that doesn't work. Magnus seems to have all the angles covered. The problem right now is you can't let black have this open file. So Fabi plays rook to a1, rook takes and bishop takes. Queen to... Magnus actually had a pretty long think here, and I think what he was worried about is, again, these like queen moves and stuff like that. There might have been other moves, for example, f6. f6 again, we've got queen e7 as a possibility. Queen to b6, threatening the pawn push. Trying to find something else here for black, but he ended up playing this move after like a 30-minute think, so I'm not sure what he was looking at here. Let's get a little music. Let's get this music turned up just a little bit. So queen e7, the idea is let's see here. Let's say, for example, if bishop to c3, queen to a2, queen to e7, the concept is he wants to play his knight to g5 and then take on f7. But I think that queen takes is a problem. Queen takes, wait a minute. Let's say here, let's just say the knight move instead. Let's say knight to g5. So here I think that black can play queen c1 check instead of taking the bishop. If king to h2, queen to f4 check. Boom. The knight is protected by the queen, but the f-pawn is not. If nothing else, black has a draw here. So this is not going to be good enough for an advantage for white. The question is whether black's got something better here now. He's won a pawn out of the deal, so maybe this whole venture was a little bit risky, which is why I think Magnus finally chose this rook to a7 move. It's a nice try, man. It's a nice try, but I feel like Fabi just neutralized pretty easily. He did play bishop to c3, queen to a2, queen to b2. I mean, I don't think there's a practical way for black to avoid this queen trade. And Fabi just seems content to just take the draw right now. Maybe he hopes to frustrate Carlsen at a later point in time. We're only 1/4 of the way through the regulation. Excuse me, the regulation games. So there's a lot more stuff that's gonna take place over the next 9 games. Queen takes, bishop takes, f6, king over to f1, immediately starts getting his king into the center. We now have an endgame. Basically, that means that one side or the other is going to try to promote a pawn. There's enough pieces that are gone off of the board that the pieces in and of themselves are not likely to be able to force or bully the other player around. You could always get a tactic or something. But as a general rule of thumb, in an otherwise equal position, this phase of the game requires that one side or the other try to make threats to queen a pawn. And that's how you win this portion of the game, which is how you know it's an endgame now. So the king to f7, the king to e2. He keeps staying one file closer to these queenside pawns and the black king. Very, very clinical. Perfect technique by Fabi. So knight to c5, bishop to c3. Knight back to e6. g3, I think, was a little bit of a careless move. I feel like, okay, here's what's happening, guys, okay? The World Championship 2018, there is a stipulation that you are not allowed to accept a draw before 30 moves have been played on the board. Now, I don't know if that's just that you're not allowed to offer a draw out of hand. I don't know what would have happened a few moves ago in that line we were just talking about, where black could force a draw. Could you use that as a strategy to force your opponent into a situation where they had to choose between a bad line and a line that forced a draw because 30 moves hadn't been played yet? So then that way you could force them to play that bad line by giving them only those 2 chances? Or is it only that you're not allowed to offer a draw verbally? That's an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to that. A Blazer gonna eat Bobby. I wouldn't be surprised. We've had 3 matches, me and Blazero, to the point that I've now been immortalized on his show with a skull named Bertrout the Skull. I assume just because he's a bonehead. I assume that's why he named his skull after me, because I'm a bonehead. But at any rate, he has yet to beat me. He has yet to feed his castle on Trout Blood. Ray Twitch says the arbiter can call a draw, not the player. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, fair enough. So in that situation, I suppose the arbiter would call a draw. So this move g3, I feel like Fabi is kind of saying, you know what? This position is sound. I don't have to worry about it. I know this style of position, and I can draw this easily, but I feel like this is a little inaccurate. Because believe it or not, you're potentially giving a target for black by moving that pawn forward 1 square. Why not make black come very deep into the position before he can attack this g-pawn? Why give him that extra option? So I feel like this move is a little careless. And then comes bishop to f8, a move I would never find. I'm terrible with bishop endgames. I would never find this move. Very interesting concept. So he's threatening the push of the b and the c pawns. He's also got bishop or knight to c5. And then later on, he's going to be able to take advantage of these pawns, and he's intending to fix this pawn actually on h4. Believe it or not. And Magnus is already seeing ahead that far. The knight comes back to d7. The knight now comes to g5, again attacking this pawn immediately. Pawn push, and then the knight back to e6. So he's done his job. You might wonder, what was the purpose of this ridiculous maneuver? Was this just like a cheap one mover, like when people play me in 3-minute games? Oh, I'll just monkey see, monkey do, I'll attack that pawn? Oh, no. No. This is a much more sophisticated move. Here is black's plan. He attacks the pawn in a way where it must go forward. Now when the knight goes back, he is directly threatening the move g5. So let's say, whatever, knight here, g5, and pawn takes. He's intending to take back with the f pawn. Rather than taking back with the knight and pushing the f pawn later, he intends to take back with the f pawn, giving himself a potential outside passed pawn. An outside passed pawn is particularly dangerous against a knight, because the knight is a clunky piece in an endgame, and has trouble moving from one side of the board to the other quickly. So an outside passed pawn is a big problem. Either the king or the knight, or something is going to get tied down to the defense of this potential passed pawn on the h-file. That was the purpose of this maneuver. Whoops. Sorry guys, kind of telegraphing here, but I'm sure you guys all saw the game anyways. Try to get back to where that move was played. Okay, so we got h4, knight back to e6, knight does go to b3, and then Carlsen plays the move h5. The reason is he just doesn't want the h-pawn to be able to push forward, so he's going to play that first, and then he's going to play the pawn to g5, and he's going to try to get this outside passed pawn over here. Hey, Poker Mage, what's up, man? How you doing? Taking a look at Game 3. I don't know if you watched it earlier. Game 3 of the World Chess Championship between Fabi and Magnus Carlsen. How do they pick sides colors? For the first game, it probably is literally a coin flip of some kind. some sort of a draw like that, Vince Silden? Hey, Jesper's in the house. What's up, man? He calls me Bursalmon. What's up, Bursalmon? Hey, Jesper, nice to see you. Hey, Halvard's in the... Hey, guys. Halvard's in the house. Halvard, I watched segments of your World Championship attempt, and the last I checked, it seemed to suggest that you were on hour 53 of a non-stop chess marathon filmed live on Twitch, ladies and gentlemen, as Halvard went for the World Championship, the Guinness Book of World Records, I should say, for the longest consecutive stretch of playing chess. Halvard, how many hours did you actually finish on? And for the record, are you in the Guinness Book of World Records? Did you break that record? It seemed to say that you did. Stopped it at 56 hours. The previous record, guys, was just over 50 hours. So Halvard, in our chat right now, ladies and gentlemen, is a Guinness Book of World Records holder. And I don't know when it's going to be broken. Man, I hope you got some sleep and some food after that. I saw you with like bottle after bottle of Coca-Cola. He was just hammering the Coca-Cola. But he seemed pretty sprite after 50 some hours, man. I gotta say so. Congratulations, man. That's a hell of a feat. Enjoy your world record. Was beaten by like 6 hours? Wait a minute. What do you mean? You beat it by 6 hours or somebody beat you by 6 hours? I thought the record was 50 hours. Am I wrong? You beat it with 6 hours. Good. Right on, man. Nice. Nice. So that is the case, folks. Halvard is a world record holder. It's a pretty cool title, man. If you guys don't know Halvard, he's a streamer. You can go give him a check out as well. I'm a strong player too. Okay, so let's just finish off this game. We ended up with Bishop D2 was played on the board. I think this game is a textbook draw. The computers gave a lot of interesting lines here. And I here's the problem, okay, guys? I feel like this F-pawn is going to be able to run now for white. And whether he takes it or pushes past, I feel like there's going to be problems. I don't know how black's supposed to make any progress on the king side. I don't think he can ever advance any of these pawns without white ending up with a majority somehow. Like a 2-on-1 majority or a 3-on-2 majority on the king side. So unless these pawns here can make progress, like maybe the king's going to come way the hell over here like this, and try to like somehow, I don't know, like push his pawn and then get his king into here and then like to a4. I don't see what other route black has to make progress in this position. If you guys see anything here, please speak up, because I'm not using the computer. I'll turn it on every once in a while just to sort of get the evaluation and stuff and like a move or two, but I'm not using a live computer here, so I don't really know what's going on. And I'm not super good in these kinds of endgames. Oh yeah, you mean on the Twitch? Yeah. Thanks, Halvard. I forgot to change the edit on Twitch. I guess I can change that here. Yeah, I just forgot to change that from yesterday. So here we go. Done. Hey Sparry, what's up, man? Oh, we got some strong players in the house now, guys. Maybe someone can make some sense of this endgame. I mean, what I'm trying to get at here is, if black has a winning prospect, what is that winning prospect? The only thing that I can see is trying to maybe play b4 and walking this king way the heck over to here, and then trying to get into a4 or something. Like maybe somehow he can get around like this. I mean, he does have a bishop. Maybe like there's a lot of squares on the dark squares for white, so there's a certain something to be said for that. Like if he can somehow force the king away from the defense of those pawns and then get like his bishop behind on the king side. But I don't really know what the plan is. Pickle Pawn says he can barely go 12 hours without sleep. I know, that was a crazy record. I mean, I was like preparing to order flowers for Halvard's family, in case he didn't make it or whatever. But I gotta say, after 53 hours, he looked pretty sprite. I mean, his hand was a little heavy, like grabbing the pieces. Just imagine that, like picking up your bones for 56 consecutive hours like that. You know what I mean? Like after a while, your hand must feel like lead. But he looked pretty sprite for after 53 hours. So whatever his strategy was to keep awake, he did a good job, man. I've seen Daniel Wrench and Robert Hess about this position, but my personal opinion is that Black can improve his position and White cannot. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has a chance, it's going to be Black, right? My question is, what's the plan? What is Black's way of improving this position precisely? I feel like he's almost got to play this B pawn push right now, doesn't he? Because if he doesn't, C3 is coming, which I think is what happened. I was down with 120 points after 30 hours. Then after 56 hours, it was only 97. So Halvard got his second wind at 56 hours. That's crazy, dude. That's kudos to you, man. That's some kind of an accomplishment. Black can choose so many paths. Let me just get this mic a little bit closer so you guys can hear me okay. Black can choose so many paths like B4, C5, right? Or C5 and C4, that's interesting. Or F5 or G5, right. Like those, I agree that all those plans are interesting, and maybe Black really should stick with his original plan of G5. But I mean, the problem is Black only gets to play one move. So okay, so for example, let's say if G5, I'm going to play F3, okay? If F5, I'm probably going to play F3 too. If you play C5, I'm going to play C3. So the only one out of those that seems like a forcing move is this C pawn push. And then I don't know, maybe knight to A5. That's also a possibility just in this position. And I think this might have been the position who Yifan was looking at. Possibly counter-striking against G5. So, again, I'm not sure, I see that those are all interesting ideas, and I feel like Black has a lot more space here. My big problem with White is he going to run out of moves? Because all he's going to be able to... His king and his pawns are all on ideal squares already. So he can't move any of these sensibly. He could, if he had to, play C3 and F3, but that's about it. He doesn't want to go any further than that, and then he's only going to have these two pieces to move. Whereas Black's going to have the king, the bishop, and the knight, and if he needs to, he can make pawn pushes. So again, my question is, what practical exact plan does Black have? What's the line where Black is getting an advantage? I mean, I want to believe that Black has something here. Let's turn on Mr. Silicon for a second just to see what it says. I mean, it never gives good evaluations in the endgames, but... I mean, it thinks that Black is minutely better, almost equal. It suggests bishop to e7. I mean, that's interesting in that, whether here or moving the king around or something, Black at least gets to put all of his pieces on perfect squares. Put the pieces wherever on the board you want, and then he can start making the pawn breaks. I was actually a little surprised when Black played c5. I thought it was a little premature, but maybe I'm wrong again. I'm sure I am. But if you put all your pieces on the exact perfect squares and wait for White to run out of moves and have to play knight to a1 or bishop to c1 or king to d1, maybe you just have this little moment in time where you can take advantage of that. Probably his 10th win, Vince Silden, talking about Halvard. Yeah, I mean, that's about right. 56 hours, a hell of a long time. I don't even think I could physically stay up. Never mind playing chess. I won 8 games in a row after 56 hours. That's insane, dude. Halvard turned into Neo from the Matrix, guys. After 56 hours of non-stop chess, he turned into Neo. He somehow solved chess, and then when he fell asleep and woke up, it probably disappeared. Sparty says it feels a bit absurd. I mean, white has the long pawn chain. Why would black be better? Yeah, that's what I mean. And they're very deep. They're very deep pawns, and they're well within the king box. They're well within this king box of white's influence. So that's why I mean the king and the pawn I feel are in ideal spots. Maybe you can make some slight improvements with f3 and c3, but that's about it. Here's how the game finished: bishop to e6, c3, preventing this b4 push, c5, bishop to e6, king to d7. Watch this move. King to d1, once again staying one file over closer to the queen side than black's king. So white is always a step up on this movement. So he's not going to get caught off guard. The king moves over, king to c2. Once again, keeps one file over closer to the pawns from black. So he's always winning this king race. And then came this move f5. I mean, again, here's the possibilities. There's g5, f5, c4, and b4. Or c4 to b4, yeah. Do any of those moves work for black? Oh, I didn't know that you were playing the same person, Halvard. I wasn't aware of that. %, score gain, 2,300. That's amazing. Very, very nice job. So, I mean, here, you know, it's just an embarrassment of riches for black. Lots of cool plans that he could try, each one a little bit different and a little sophisticated, and he spent some time on these lines, but ultimately I don't feel black has any push through. The game ended like this: f5, king back to d1, so he's preparing for possibilities of this pawn getting pushed at some point in time. The pawn ends up taking on e4, which I didn't really like. Pawn takes, and then this move is like, I don't understand this move at all. c4. I think he played knight back to d2, knight to c5. It's a good try. He wants to try to get in on some of these tender squares, but the bishop can take it. Bishop takes and king to e2. You might think that the bishop against the knight is a big advantage, especially with these pawns all on dark squares. But in reality, there's no way for him to break through. And now, once again, here's this majority of pawns that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's a 4-on-3 majority, which means that in and of themselves, these pawns can punch through on the king side. So either the bishop or the king is going to be tied down forever to the defense of these pawns rolling. And so in my opinion, this dynamically compensates for the potential pass pawn on the other side of the board. The only thing, again, is if there's some way for this king to get all the way into here, like this. But that's an awfully long plan. I don't think that's ever going to work. b4, pawn takes, bishop takes, knight to e6, king to c5, f4. Here we go. The king's not going to be able to wander too far. Pawn takes, and bishop to a5, f5, pawn takes, knight takes. Is this what happens? Oh, I didn't see this part of the game, guys. I thought the game ended up right here at bishop to a5. Apparently I missed some blitzy moves at the end. I didn't see the rest of this game. So the f-pawn push, either pawn moves, the bishop can easily come back to protect it. The knight is going to be tied down to the defense of this pawn. Pawn takes, knight takes c4, a nice little shot. Easy enough for these masters, and Magnus would have seen that from a mile away, but there was nothing to be done about it. He's going to take away his last substantial danger, and here's what happens. This is something that you need to know your endgames in order to see this move, guys. Knight takes, king takes, pawn takes, and here's what happens. This king is easily going to be able to scoop this pawn. He's just going to move here, here, and then he's going to move here and scoop this pawn. But here's the problem, that is that even in this position, so let's say if black king moves here, 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 oh, let's say bishop to here, king, 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 and king, an amateur might look at this position and think, oh my god, this is like a crush, right? Like, black is up 4 points of material. He's just going to walk his pawn in and get a queen and checkmate very easily. It's not the case. The problem is that this pawn is going to queen on the wrong colored square. And this is a big, big deal. This is a big, big, big deal. Had it been instead a black square, or had this instead been a white squared bishop, this is an easy win. And when we turn on Mr. Silicon will agree with me. This is a dead draw. Unless the computer's not working for some reason. But trust me, folks, this is a dead draw, a textbook draw. So the same situation is going to take place. You can always get as far as something like this. But you cannot force me off of this square. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, I'm always going to be able to come to this square. You cannot guard this with your pawn. You cannot guard this with your king, and you cannot guard this with your bishop. Whatever move you make, whether here or you push this pawn, at some point in time, you're going to find yourself in a situation where it's a stalemate. You cannot force me from the square because it's a white square, and there's no piece on the board that can... I don't know why this keeps doing this to me, but there's no position on the board. Oh, at least the computer's working now. So maybe that was all okay. So let's say, for example, if king to here... Let's just look at this position. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. King to here, king to here, king takes, king, whatever, king to here.